working from home means you must have to be Mr. Mom. If you're working from home and you're going to be an entrepreneur, your wife's going to expect you to be way more involved with the house and the kids. Is that the case?
Hey, good to be back.
Chris, Jamie, and Michael here, back for another episode of the Entrepreneurial Family Man podcast. We are three dads who love our wives, love our kids, and want to thrive in business, but we don't want to thrive in business and forsake those that matter most to us.
Some of those myths out there say you got to go big in one area and you can't have both.
I expect my wife to block out 60 hours a week. Any noise whatsoever, she's going to hear from me, believe me. So,
how's that working out for you, buddy?
Well, that's obviously not the truth, but I used to think working from home would just be nice because when you're done with work, you could just walk out of the office and your family would be there. But it's absolutely a completely different animal than I ever imagined.
Yeah, so that's what we want to talk about today, right? Is this paradigm shift, right? You're going from maybe you are going from working at a job. You're going from an employee to an entrepreneur, an employer mindset. Are you just going to replicate what that looks like? And maybe you're home, but you're in an office 60 hours a week, but your kids and your wife, those who you love most, are right outside the door. But hey, I don't have time for that because I'm trying to grow a business here. No, come on. We're trying to debunk that myth and say you can really have it both ways, but it's got to be intentional. And we want to talk about that now in terms of the paradigm shift, the mindset that has to go into this whole work from home mentality. I mean, what's that been like for you, Michael?
For me, I first had to just get rid of this idea of traditional male and female roles. I think that's like something that some guys are uncomfortable with, right? Like, I'm a man. I'm not going to do the laundry and the dishes and homemaking type activities. I'm going to stick with what I do. And so that was a big shift for me, is like letting go of all of that. I mean, if I want to be like every other dude in American society, then okay, fall into those traditional roles of what a male and a female does. But we are different here at EFM. And for me, that means plugging in and helping out wherever it's needed. Actually, there might be things that I thrive at and do really well at in homemaking type activities, and other things that my wife is strong at. And so let's just sit down and figure that out. Let's have a discussion, an ongoing discussion between my wife and I is, okay, where do we need help and how can we help each other out?
We're signing up for a completely different lifestyle, right? I mean, when we're working from home, we have the ability to do this life together. And Michael, I love what you said there in terms of just finding ways to bless your wife, finding things, little tasks or chores or whatever to take off her plate. And obviously the wives are going to cover us when we need it. We've got those periods throughout the day when we've got to really lean into what we're doing, whether it's a conference call or coaching calls or whatever it is that we've got going on in our lives. They're there to cover that time for us, but we get to roll up our sleeves, get a little dirty, doing diapers or washing the dishes or whatever when those opportunities exist. I mean, we've got to be taking a look at this and saying, how can I have opportunities to be more involved at strategic times?
Yeah. We can't assume that either, right? We can't just kind of wing it and decide, okay, I think my wife needs some help in this area, so I'll just step in here. For me, what was really huge is I was actually getting some coaching from a friend of all of ours, Jay Parks. He was helping me out with some coaching, and it brought a ton of clarity to my situation because I was having struggles in this area, really knowing how to unplug and transfer over into time with my business, but also help out at the same time. And what we uncovered is that there was a specific question that I needed to ask my wife. And it was this: what's the hardest part of your day? And that's what I did, is I went and asked her, Lydia, what's the hardest part of your day? What's the most challenging part? And she said, you know what? It's right around dinner time. It's right at that 5 o'clock, 5:30 time when I've been with the kids all day. I'm exhausted. They're nagging me. They're asking for things. They're ready to eat, but dinner's not ready yet, and trying to get dinner together. And that just is like really rough for me. And I'm thinking in my head, well, geez, I'd be happy to just step in there and help out with that. I mean, it'd be great to see the kids. I like making dinner. Like I can jump in that area. And so I did. And it just alleviated a ton of stress that was on her plate. And it was not that big of a burden for me at the time. So we got to kind of dig in a little bit. I had to dig in and ask my wife what would be helpful. And that's what came out of it. And it really worked out well.
That's so good, Michael. I know me and Ruthie have had a lot of conversations about this, how we can help each other out, and what you figured out with Lydia. In our own mind, sometimes we're afraid to ask that question or lean into this because we're going to expect a list as long as our arm, right, of all these things that would take us 50 hours a week to do. But sometimes I'm just surprised how, going upstairs and putting the wash into the dryer, how just that one little thing helping out Ruthie kind of frees her up. Our wives have so much that they're doing every single day. And I think we need to be really open to the fact that kind of like a minimum effective dosage, it's like certain things, certain times give a big bang for their buck. And I like how you discovered that with coaching with Jay. Sometimes it's easier than we think to make a huge impact. And another thing that I'll add is at our house, we've figured out there's some things that Ruthie hates doing that I don't really mind doing at all. And I think we need to ask those questions because maybe there's some things in our businesses even that our wives would actually enjoy helping us out a little bit. And there could be something that is super stressful to us. I know this episode is not about our wives helping us in our business, but as we invest in them and lighten the load for them, it's like it will be reciprocated. And so we're called to serve our wives. And I think we need to be looking for little things on a daily basis that can really free them up.
Jamie, you brought this up, so I've got to ask now, what are some of those little things? Like what's a good example for anyone listening who's like, well, I don't even know where to start. But I mean, what were some things where you and Ruthie identified, hey, this is kind of a stress. And you're like, you know what? I don't mind doing that.
The laundry can be really stressful for her. I'll just be honest. If you'd watch me like folding clothes, like you would not want me to fold your clothes. They're just super unorganized. But as far as taking all the laundry into I don't always even help her out with this, but it makes such a big difference when I just bring the laundry into the laundry room and then I'll start a load for her and change the laundry. Just obviously, guys, we're going to screw things up, like shrink some sweaters and damage some articles here. Chris is
totally been there. Totally been there.
Well, like younger kids, it works out great.
I think I kind of got off laundry duty because I just ruined too many loads.
Here's the thing. Everybody that starts laundry is going to ruin some loads. I mean, another thing is Ruthie has our kids doing laundry. And our kids have put bleach in with like blue jeans and like all this other stuff. It's like they're learning at a young age. And maybe we're all not the Renaissance men like Michael is doing this so early and he's got young kids. He's doing all this stuff like preparing meals, but it starts off really difficult. Like we're going to like overcook the bacon and wreck things. But this is like a lifestyle thing. Like we are on a mission, not necessarily to become Renaissance men, but to throw our hat in the ring and try to figure things out.
No, but those are good examples, right? I mean, so let's talk about this in terms of just this idea, this point of setting the stage to get on the same page. So, Michael, you mentioned how that was a great question that you asked Lydia. Question for you. Did you do that during the middle of dinner with 3 screaming kids throwing spaghetti on the walls? Or was it a little more nuanced in terms of how you brought that conversation up?
I probably tried in the midst of the chaos. And when clearly it was not getting through just because of everything that was going on, I reevaluated and then waited. But yeah, that's been huge. I'm starting to learn, haven't fully learned, but I'm starting to learn that if we want to have a meaningful conversation that actually creates some change in our lives, we got to be away from the craziness. Sometimes we'll do that on a date. Like when we're all relaxed and we're eating good food and have a glass of wine and we can hear each other and we're actually looking at each other and there aren't loud noises and screams and stuff flying all over the place, things can actually get accomplished in the conversation. So I would say that is huge, getting alone and having the right environment for this conversation.
Yeah, that's good. It's all about that, laying the right environment. Usually a date or wine or the kids at least are in bed and you're talking about some focused conversation. And, if you're listening, don't be a wimp and think that, oh man, I can't even bring this conversation up, or I don't want to do the stuff around the house, whatever. Like I remember I had just to kind of come in with a little humble pie and some humility and go, you know what? I'm not really pulling much weight around here when it comes to household stuff. And so what are some areas that if I did a couple things a week that would really help and bless you, like what would those be? Just like you asked, Michael, what's the hardest part of your day? And if you come in it from that angle, like, man, your wife's going to go, she just take your temperature, like something wrong with you.
Yes. And it's going to heat up the bedroom if you do that.
Hey-o. No doubt.
Chris, I was just thinking here, you always talk about travel because you're the travel entrepreneur, but it's like you have that, what's that one quote where that you have new perspective and vigor when you're away from your environment? And, Michael mentioned like do this when you're on a date. Me and Ruthie had these conversations there's a lot of awareness when we're on vacation, like 1,000 miles away from our home, because we don't have the laundry and we don't have the meals to prepare if we're on a cruise or something. And so I think timing is something that I look back and I had these conversations when like in the stress, and like a lot of times nothing good comes out of those conversations except a lot of tension. Maybe that's why we avoid the conversation sometimes at home, but look for those opportunities when you're on a vacation and you're super relaxed. But I think that's really a point that you guys mentioned that has really worked well for me.
And hey, I mean, if we're talking about, so we talked about that paradigm shift, and now we're saying, okay, this is part of the action is like getting on the same page, whether you're doing it on vacation, which is that's a great opportunity to do it somewhere like that, where you're away from the chaos of dirty dishes and laundry and whatever piling up. The way you can kind of couch that discussion too, and the great question that Michael posed. I was just remembering a quote from Mother Teresa, and so you can like lead with the appreciation for your wife and follow up with like, how can I help? But there's this awesome quote. She says, "There is more hunger for love and appreciation in this world than for bread." Your wife just wants to be appreciated. Like she just wants to know, hey, you know what? I haven't even told my wife in years that I really appreciate you cooking meals for us, because I'd be a slob if it weren't, or doing the laundry or whatever. But to hear that from us, and then the follow up of how can I help you? What's another way that could take something off your plate, right?
Oh, Chris, that's such a good reminder. After we get off here, I'm going to tell my wife that I appreciate her. It's been a little too long since I've done that. Thank you.
I need to do the same thing, Chris.
I'm preaching to the choir here too, so I would do the same thing after this call. But obviously, they appreciate the work that we do and the income we provide for the family. But it's so easy to overlook the little things throughout the day. Like I know one thing, and I'm guilty of harping on my wife sometimes. With the 2 little girls and 4 kids, like we're just trying to get out the door sometimes to get places. And I'm like, honey, can you do the girl's hair? It looks so amazing when you do the girl's hair. And yet I don't know if I've appreciated or even said, like, I so appreciate when you do their hair, because they look so much better than just, tomboy style or whatever.
Survival style.
Survival mode, right? I don't have time for pigtails. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Exactly.
Chris, you got to learn how to watch some tutorials on YouTube about doing some braiding and stuff like that. You got 2 little girls?
I totally do, man.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've had friends say, "Oh, looks like Daddy tried to do the hair today."
Oh, man. Sounds like a challenge.
Well, her hair is a lot harder to do than yours, so.
Yes.
But this whole idea of us leaning into taking on these roles at home and cooking meals, I like that idea of us positioning ourselves as leaders in our family. Our kids are watching us. It's like I want to teach my kids a real man can come in the kitchen and be inventive and have fun with it and pull out different ingredients and try to make things. And the same way, just like obviously, Chris, you're never probably going to do as good of curling your daughter's hair as Alicia does, but let's encourage each other to kind of break the mold on what a modern day guy is and not have all these sort of old world views that like a man does this and a woman does this. Because I'm thinking about my sons. I want them to be able to help out and just being appreciative of our wives. I think it's a lot easier when we actually step into that role and see that some of these things that women seem to do so easily, I think they've spent a lot of time perfecting it and doing it. And that's the reason why they've done better. So there's a mindset shift as well, that it's like we tell ourselves we can't do these things as guys, but we just can't do them yet because we're leaning into something that most guys never even get the opportunity to do.
Yeah, that's great, Jamie. There's another thing that just came up in my mind, and it's because of my mistake, of course. Anything good comes out of my mistakes. One thing that I forget is that a lot of times our wives, I know my wife has experienced this a little bit, is they want to be good mothers, right? They want to be seen as effective mothers, as great moms who are good at all the things that they're supposed to be good at. And sometimes when we come swooping in and say, here, I'll take this and I'll handle this and I'll take this off your plate, we got to be a little bit sensitive. I know I'm learning how to do this and know that that can be offensive sometimes too, because they're working on it. It's almost like if you were working on a business idea or your own business and somebody came in and said, well, you're not very good at that, so I'll step in here. You're like, well, that might make you feel like a failure in that area. So we have to be a little bit sensitive of how we approach this and be delicate. And like Chris, I love that reminder of just be encouraging, just show appreciation. Like affirm them in what they're doing and the job that they're doing. That goes so far when you have that posture.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder for me too. I know I've been guilty of that, Michael, where you can kind of swoop in and save the day, right? But sometimes you got to understand, and it goes back to that intentional conversation, right? It really does, in terms of getting on the same page, asking like for example, right? In our marriage, so Alicia is the fun-loving and tends to be more night owl-ish. I'm the early morning person. She is not an early morning person. I'm not going to try to change that, even though I've tried and failed many times. So because obviously their kids are up a little bit earlier, like I'm totally fine now in doing the breakfast routine and kind of getting stuff going, right? And it's been cool to see. And Jamie, back to your point too, of the kids are watching this. And just the other morning, we're up and Justy's like, you know what? I think I'll try to make some eggs today. And he's like, getting the spatula out. He's like, short order cook, like, Lucia, what do you want? You want over medium? Like, what do you want here? He's like making fried eggs. It was awesome, right?
Right.
And so just to see that and see, like, if we're leading by example, our kids are noticing, our kids are following. And there have been a few times where, like, even because they've been up early enough and they've run upstairs with a plate of food and it's like, breakfast in bed for mom. And that's just like, whoa, great start to the day.
Chris, this gets me exciting. I know Ruthie and I, we homeschool our kids like you guys do. To me, this is like a part of what we're doing with homeschool, is that we get to like take risks in the kitchen. It's like, what a learning opportunity. Just have a learner mindset and to be an example to our kids.
You might not see, I know I didn't see right away as I started to help out all this kind of reciprocity from my wife. Like it takes some time, but eventually as I've taken on this mindset, this dynamic has developed between my wife and I where we're trying to outdo each other with how we help each other out. And that's been really fun. Like if that's our argument, I feel like we're headed in the right direction where, no, you rest, I'm going to do this. No, you did this last time. I'll do it this time. And that's really awesome. What your relationship can become like. And I'm not, by no means have I arrived in that area. I screw this thing up a lot, But every time we get in a fight about us outdoing each other, I'm just like, okay, this stuff is starting to work. We're starting to create this dynamic that we want in our marriage.
That's a good argument to have. Who's out blessing who here?
It's like competition of helping each other. Like our worst drag out fights ever were like we were competing against who was helping each other the most.
And I've seen you guys both do such good jobs of this where because you've been intentional about how you work from home, how you've taken on certain roles and certain little tasks, you find ways to bless your wife and say, you know what? Hey, I'm going to take the kids to the park while you go do this, or I'll be here. You go do your little mani pedicure, or go on a coffee date with your friends. And man, that kind of stuff just blows their socks off. Blesses them, right? I mean, but I've seen that happen literally in each of your lives. So, congrats, guys! You're doing something right in between failures. I know.
I receive it, Chris. The truth is, if we're working as a team, that people in our family do some things way better than us that we need done. It's truly the case that we are way stronger together. Like I'm on this call right now with you guys, and I know that your wives are holding down the fort. It's like my wife is actually wrapping up things to send to Amazon for our business now. And she does that like twice a week. She'll step in and help me. This afternoon, she was at the YMCA with Cecilia and Cecilia's girlfriend down the street, and me and the three boys went out to lunch. And we're just covering for each other. Like we kind of like what you do, Chris, with like all the sports events in an 8-week window, we batch a lot of things. And so we'll like hit it hard and work together as a family doing things. It's totally a paradigm shift of the traditional 40-hour work week. Yeah. We could get so much more done if we kind of leverage helping each other out and trying to bless each other. It's a win-win. It's so awesome.
That is. Well, that's part again of that same page, right? You didn't just arrive at that. You had that conversation, and that leads to another discussion point is in terms of anticipating these seasons of busyness, anticipating the season of chaos. Michael, right now you are in this crazy season where you just had, you have a newborn of like what? Not even 10 days old, right?
Yeah, about a week.
You have no bags in your eyes. Life's good, right?
Yeah, right.
Our audience still doesn't know the name of the baby yet.
Well, EFM family, welcome Asher Nassim McGreevy.
Asher.
He was a heavy hitter at 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Not too heavy.
Wow. Yeah. When he sits around the crib, he sits around the crib.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we knew we were getting into a crazy season of life. Let me lay it out for you. 3-year-old, 1-year-old, newborn. We're tired, especially my wife. I mean, poor Lydia is up every hour sometimes, all night long, and that's just kind of her reality. It's just nurse, poop, change a diaper, burp, repeat over. just continuous.
I'm having nightmares on my floor. That's totally where you are right now.
Yeah, so like we've done it twice before. We knew this was coming, so we did have a conversation about, okay, what are we going to do to make it through this season of life? And we just kind of got to this place where, all right, you're going to be up all night with the baby, so I'll get up early with the kids and I'll watch the kids. I'll feed them breakfast. We'll go play together, and we'll make this thing work. And if we need to adjust, then we'll adjust. And we've had some follow-up conversations too. How's this going? How can we change things around? Where do we just need to grin and bear it? And where do we need to make adjustments? So this is an ongoing conversation for us. And it's tough, guys. It's really difficult, but we're making it through because we had that conversation before disaster struck.
Yeah, well done. That's what you got to do. It's that intentional conversation beforehand and taking those necessary action steps to just anticipate, okay, this is going to be a season that's going to be crazy, but we're going to get through it if we can help some roles here, some responsibilities, and using all the tools at our disposal. Part of that too, even just in whatever stage of life you're in with kids or marriage, but just blocking time, calendaring, looking at your calendar together. Mike, I know you guys do that like on every Sunday night or something to kind of take a look at the week ahead. And, Alicia and I tend to do that on Sundays as well. Just say, okay, what's our week look like here? And where are there going to be changes needed? Where's time where you just going to want a break? Go grab coffee, or I'll take the kids away from the house, or whatever it is, right? But you've got to be intentional about that.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to add, Chris, as far as putting these things in the calendar and blocking those discussions with your spouse, is that like when you guys had that really intense 10 weeks, 8 weeks of activities, one thing that me and Ruthie have done and we continue to do is when we're done with kind of a sprint, I guess you'd call it a sprint of just like activities over and over again, kind of running like crazy. It's like we'll kind of do a recap and take an inventory of what worked, if we kind of overshot or we were too busy, or if we should have done more or what we would have changed. But I think that's probably a really good opportunity to tweak those things. You can't tweak those and get better if you don't really recap and get on the same page of what worked and what didn't.
That's good. I was just reminded that I think it was the Navy SEALs that started this. They call it the after action review, right? They just go through this intense training or battle or whatever it is, and they have this after action review as an entire team. What worked well? What do we need to improve? Where can we grow from this? And yeah, you've got to do that. I mean, we're like, as an example, totally, we're Jamie, you mentioned this, we're in this crazy season. So our kids don't play sports year round, but there are times when they love sports. They love being out there with their friends. We love being, on the sidelines. We both coach. And so we're in the middle of this crazy season of 6 to 8 weeks where we've got flag football going for 2 kids, soccer going for 3 of them. We're just like overlapping at the fields, 4 days a week, game days. And this was like an experiment. We knew it was going to be this short time period sprint. We kind of all love sports. We're geared toward that, I guess. But we know that we have to do this like after action review after this is done and just say, were we crazy? What was that like? Did it work? Should we check this off and say, we're never doing this again? Like, I'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah, those are so important. If you're not doing those with your spouse, you need to start doing those.
Oh, that's where some of the best adjustments happen after you go through a challenging experience and you say, okay, what went horribly this time that we never want to do again? And what went well? Like, let's pull something out of this and then apply it to the next situation. That's how your life improves and your relationships improve. Great one.
Amen.
Absolutely, guys. So, hey, as we wrap up here and just leave some action, I mean, part of this, it really is changing your mindset about working from home. So what could you do this week to approach your wife, to approach your spouse and say, like Michael asked, what's the hardest thing in your schedule? What could I do to help out more? And remember to appreciate her. Talk about that. Be specific. Jamie, you mentioned something earlier about being on the prowl to look for small areas with big leverage.
Napoleon has this quote that I'm going to botch it up, but it goes something like this. In every battle, there's a 5-minute window where the battle can either be won or lost. And I take all my energy and I focus in on those 5 minutes. What about looking for those 5-minute windows? Jay Parks helped Michael figure out preparing the meal before dinner. You can start by doing that question that Michael asked. Another one that I like to ask is, what's causing 80% of your stress? Don't wait until your wife is stressed out. Be on the prowl, like Chris said.
If you're the type of guy that likes to go hide out in the shop while your wife deals with all the kids and makes dinner and everything, probably not the right show to be listening to. But if you're not, you can do this, guys. You can do this. If you're listening in your car right now, don't fear it. Take a step in that direction. Start having this ongoing conversation with your wife. Outdo each other. Come on,
Mike,
get in the game. Make it happen.
Mike, I think there's guys like I used to be who are hiding out in the garage and they want to do it, but they don't know how. start to maybe believe, put that learner mindset on that you could do far more than you ever expected if you just got moving here. I was the guy who was afraid to do this. And I mean, now Ruthie will like leave me with the kids for like 4 and 5 days at a time. And like, we have a great time. And I would have expected I could ever done that. So sometimes we got to give ourselves some mercy and like start really, really small.
Amen. That's the key, right? You started with one little step. That's all we're asking you. If that's a question to ask your wife, if it's just a start, the beginning of a conversation, just take one little step. When you see what happens there, you can take your next step.
Yeah. And if you don't want to take one little step, and this is not for you, then please unsubscribe to our website right now.
So there you go, guys. Find a way to bless your wife at home this week. Jump in and help.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit EFMLife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.